How you doing, guys? Okay, so listen, this is one of the most important things I think that anyone can do, okay? And it's called CARS, Controlled Articulated Rotations, okay? Now, I'm gonna give you this intro once and you can choose to watch it anytime as you want to try and understand the processes that we go through. Our joints, so the bit between the bones, for example, the elbow, the shoulders, the hips, etc., they're capsular. So in other words, what happens is they're engulfed with a capsule, okay? And this capsule membrane, inside it keeps the synovial fluids, and the synovial fluids enable it to, it lubricates it. So it's like an oil in a bearing, for example, okay? Now what happens is this with joints. When we're born, we have massive movement of joints. For example, we can do the splits. You can get a baby's legs and you can move them all over the place, no problem at all. And as we get older, we limit the movement ourselves. So we actually do physically limit that movement ourselves. And there's something called a stretch reflex where if we overuse a joint, it stretches and it feels like we can't go anymore. You know that? Or for example, if you were to do the splits, you'll get so far and you go, no, I'm not very flexible, I can't do any more of that. Now this is a funny thing because this isn't a physical attribute, this is a mental attribute. So what happens is your body's muscles stretch and they hit these things called muscle spindles, and the muscle spindles say, well, don't go any further because you might damage yourself. So that shuts down that system, which means that you can't go any further. Now we can obviously, through training, push these muscle spindles wider and wider and get more and more movement in a joint. That's why some people can do the splits and some people are really flexible. It's not something that you're either born with or without, it's a learned behavior. And this is a really important thing that we've got to understand. This is a learned behavior. So controlled articulations, rotations of the joints enable us to start exploring the range of movement that we have. And in some instances, increase it, and in some instances help repair damaged joints or joints that haven't been moved for a long time. Remember this, with a joint, if you don't use it, you lose it. Simple as that. And I know a lot of people will go, yeah, I mean, I can't do a squat, or I can't do this with my joints, it hurts. Unless your doctor has specifically said that your joint is aberrant, in other words, that the joint is damaged, seriously arthritic, for example, then you should always be able to get that movement back. In the case of it being arthritic or damaged in some ways, then maintaining the movement you have got should be your priority. So CAR or CARS should be done to maintain the level of motion you have already. Now, I'm not going to promise you it's a silver bullet for everything. So there's going to be times when you can't do certain movements to the range that you'd like to, but by doing this, I can pretty much guarantee you that your joints will get healthier. How and why? I can talk to this in a lot of detail because this is a passion of mine, but generally speaking, there is very little blood flow to their tips and to the joints. So for instance, you have your two bones here, you'll have a layer of cartilage over that. In the cartilage, you don't have any blood vessels at all. And in the bones you do have blood vessels in the bones, little capillaries, but certainly not in the cartilage, and very little in the ligaments also. But these joints work like this, they're together like this, okay? And in this area is full of the synovial fluid, like the oil, like the lubricating oil. And what happens is it's designed for your joints to do this, never touch. They sort of do this the whole time between each other, okay? Here, they just don't touch. And that synovial fluid assists that. Now, because there's no blood vessels in the synovial fluid joint itself, so there's none on that cartilage, the only way to nourish that area is by the movement of the synovial joints. So the synovial fluid has the nourishment in it, but you've got to move it to push it into these joints. It's a little bit like sifting flour through the sift. You know, when you're sifting flour, if you just hold it there, it doesn't do anything, but if you sort of agitate it, the flour will come through. It's very similar. You want to be making this joint move to nourish the joint. That honestly is why when you do this and don't move that joint, the capsule, so the actual membrane that keeps the joint in place, we call it a capsule. There isn't a physical thing called a capsule, by the way, I can talk to this another time, but the physical space that keeps the bursa, that keeps the fluids in place, also become scarred and brittle and unflexible. So what happens is, instead of them being able to flex all over the place, they start being tough, and you have to start stretching them out to get them used again. A couple of things, right? I could talk to you about this forever, and I'm happy to do a Q&A on this at some stage, or if you ask me personally the question, then I'm happy to talk to you about this in more detail. But the important things when we're doing CARs is this: we never go through pain. The concept of that, push through the pain and you'll be all right, is stupid, especially when it comes to joints, because you don't know what you're pushing through. There may be times when it's like a little bit achy and a little bit tight. That is fine, that's not what we're talking. What I'm talking through is pain and pinching. Now this is one thing that you've got to keep an eye out for, and that's pinching angle pain. Put them both together, pinching angle pain. This is something that we want to try and avoid. And I'm going to show you what that looks like on my neck, okay? So if I were to push my neck to the side here, and then to this side, all right? So the closing angle pain, pinching angle pain or closing angle pain would be on the closing angle, which is here, because this angle is getting less. So this is opened angle, but I'm closing that angle, and if I feel a pinching in here and a pain in here at this angle as I'm going towards it, then that's a problem. We want to avoid that. This is opening angle, okay? If you feel a bit of pain here and stretching here, that's good. That's what it's meant to be doing. We shouldn't be feeling it here, because here we are letting off the pressure, aren't we? So if you come here and it's like, here, then we're going to come back again and avoid that area. It's the same with your shoulder. If you lift up here, where's the closing angle? Well, the closing angle is going to be here on top, because we're going towards it. And this is the opening angle. So if you're coming up and you feel pinching here and pain here, then you're going to avoid it, okay? This is very simple. With the elbow, where's the closing angle? Here. So if you feel a pain in here, we're going to stop. This is the main rule of CARs, okay? So always trying to think that. The second really important thing is this: you can only move where you can move. I can give you one example of this. If I were to say to you, put your hand up and reach as high as you can with your arm, okay? So this is where my arm goes, straight up. Yeah, this is good. If I have to do this to go up, am I using my shoulder? No, because I'm using my whole back, my whole body to twist over to try and get that shoulder up, my arm up, okay? So this is a really interesting thing I want you to understand as well. If I say, move your shoulder and arm up as high as you can, even if it's here, that is correct. This is incorrect. Yeah, because you're using the rest of your body, okay? So we've got to try and think about our joints in isolation. Raise your shoulder and arm as high as you can, is this. Look at my body, it's perfectly still. Good. So some of us will be able to get up here, no problem. Some of us will only be able to get to here. Some of us maybe only get to here. Doesn't matter, because it's your joint we're talking about. Does that make sense? Wicked? Watch on.